Señores, este conflicto entre Donald Trump y Elon Musk no solo está sacando a la luz lo peor de estos dos personajes nefastos, sino que también está revelando los aspectos más patéticos de sus personalidades. En el caso de Trump, lo que queda al descubierto es su debilidad. Desde ayer, pues, ha estado completamente acorralado, en silencio, sin atreverse a hablar con la prensa. La razón de todo esto es Elon Musk, que sacó a relucir públicamente su conexión con Jeffrey Epstein. Desde entonces, ¿qué ha hecho Donald Trump? Escondido. Lo último que pasó, muy vergonzoso, que incluso dejó sin palabras a Fox News. Antes de que lleguemos exactamente a este momento en el cual Trump literalmente huye de los reporteros, vamos a empezar con una de las pocas declaraciones públicas que hizo el día de ayer. Y honestamente, señores, no van a creer lo que decidió publicar. Esto fue lo que escribió en Truth Social. Acabo de inspeccionar el sitio del nuevo salón de baile que construiremos, cortesía de un tal Donald J. Trump en la Casa Blanca. Así es, señores, en medio de una crisis políticas, con Elon Musk lanzando bombas mediáticas en su contra, con el nombre de Epstein nuevamente en el centro de la conversación, se le ocurre hablar de un salón de baile. Está perdiendo su mayor donante, está siendo abandonado por sus propios aliados, y mientras tanto, él se enfoca en diseñar un salón de fiestas en la Casa Blanca. Amigos, este hombre claramente no quiere hablar de lo que realmente importa, no quiere hablar de Epstein, no quiere saber de Elon Musk, mucho menos sobre su agenda política. Al parecer tampoco quiere hablar con alguien, incluyendo a Musk. Pero bueno, como si no fuese lo suficiente, y que sale corriendo de la prensa como si lo persiguieran, primero quiero que veamos un breve reporte desde Fox News sobre su estado mental actual. Escuchen esto.
This time from Brett Baer, who just spoke to President Trump on the phone. He reflected on Elon Musk, and here's what Brett learned in that phone call. Trump is not interested in talking to Elon. Trump is not worried about threats of a third party. Now, that comes because Elon Musk tweeted this. He put up a poll and he said, it is time to create a new political party in America that actually represents the 80% in the middle. He asked that as a question of his followers. So he asked about a potential third party. President Trump says he's not worried to Brett Baer. President Trump also pointed to his favorable polls and his strong support among Capitol Hill Republicans. Noteworthy, Elon Musk called for constituents to call congressmen and women. Whether those calls have materialized, I've seen reports that they have not. Would also note, underscoring President Trump's point, he's ahead in the Real Clear Politics average of Obama and Bush at this point in the second term. And finally, a direct quote from Brett Baer from President Trump. The quote from President Trump is this: Elon has totally lost it.
Y es que, señores, hasta ellos admiten que algo no está bien. Donald Trump tiene los sentimientos heridos. Elon Musk ya no quiere ser su amigo. Nadie en el partido republicano lo está defendiendo con fuerza. Ni siquiera J.D. Vance se dedicó más que un tibio mensaje de apoyo, ¿no? Y vimos como Kash Patel, que se supone que es uno de los fieles escuderos de Trump, estaba en un podcast de Joe Rogan cuando explotó esta noticia de Epstein y ni siquiera se atrevió a decir algo. Señores, todo se está desmoronando y por eso no es ninguna sorpresa que Trump quiera evitar las cámaras. También existe otro frente que lo ha estado afectando y son el tema de las noticias de Kilmar Abreu García, ¿no? Que como bien sabemos será extraditado de vuelta a Estados Unidos. Pam Bondi reaccionó con un discurso cargado de miedo, mentiras y bueno, como era de esperarse. Escuchen esto.
Our government presented El Salvador with an arrest warrant, and they agreed to return him to our country. We're grateful to President Bukele for agreeing to return him to our country to face these very serious charges. This is what American justice looks like. Upon completion of his sentence, we anticipate he will be returned to his home country of El Salvador. The grand jury found that over the past 9 years, Abreu Garcia has played a significant role in an alien smuggling.
Pero al menos ella habló un poco del tema, ¿no? Trump ni eso. No dijo nada sobre la extradición, no dijo nada sobre el pleito con Elon Musk, no ha dicho nada, punto. Entonces, todo esto nos lleva al momento más ridículo del día. El clip en el que Trump huye literalmente de los reporteros, dejando a los presentadores de Fox completamente sorprendidos. Vean esto.
Where he is now. He's now going to board Air Force One, fly to his golf club at Bedminster to spend the weekend there. Let's see if the president, no, it doesn't look like he's going to stop and talk to reporters. It looks like he is getting inside his vehicle. Let's see. I don't think we're going to get him to talk to us, unfortunately. But anyway, he's going to be boarding. It looks like he got inside his vehicle. Maybe they're going to motorcade there rather than fly Air Force One.
Vieron la cara de la presentadora, ¿no? Estaba incrédula. Pensó que Trump iba a parar, ¿no? Que iba a responder aunque sea una pregunta suave, pero no. Salió corriendo. Y claro, señores, ¿qué esperábamos? No puede responder preguntas, no puede explicar su relación con Epstein, no puede ni justificar su pelea con Elon Musk, no puede defender el presupuesto catastrófico que está promoviendo con los republicanos en el Senado. Por eso, señores, él se esconde. Por eso está publicando sobre salones de baile, negocios con China que no existen. Todo con tal de querer distraer la atención. Para colmo, su plan estrella, este famoso proyecto de ley que quiere imponer, podría fracasar. Y si no fracasa, lo que viene podría ser peor, porque es una agenda diseñada para desmantelar programas sociales, quitarle la salud a millones de personas, dañar el país durante generaciones. Por suerte, al menos existen gente que están denunciando esto. El congresista Greg Casar lo dejó muy claro cuando habló de Trump, de Marjorie Taylor Greene y de Dodge justo aquí. Escuchen.
Chairwoman Greene, you and my Republican colleagues have called this hearing that is all about cutting off money to nonprofits for things that are, quote, contrary to the national interest. What we've heard here is my Republican colleagues going after nuns and priests that feed immigrants, going after nonprofits that do scary things like support our queer youth. It is astounding to me. But we do have one nonprofit leader here, Mr. Krikorian. Mr. Krikorian, you're the director of the Center for Immigration Studies, correct?
Yes.
And according to your organization's website, you do receive taxpayer funding or have from the Department of Justice and the Census Bureau.
Yeah, we did research contracts for them many years ago.
Got it. And so you do have a taxpayer-funded nonprofit, and your nonprofit, as we've discussed in committee before, has shared articles from Kevin McDonald, whose work argues that Jewish people, alleged by him, are genetically driven to destroy Western societies. Is that correct?
We distributed no such article.
But you did distribute work from this anti-Semite, correct?
We distributed work all across the spectrum,
Right,
from New
his-
York
from this
Times
anti-Semite
to anyone
comment.
else.
Got
yes.
it, okay. Your organization has also circulated an article by Holocaust denier John Friend. Is that correct? We said last time we were in a hearing that yes, you have.
We've distributed no articles about Holocaust denial, obviously. It has
But you
nothing to
have
do
from
with us.
Holocaust denier John Friend?
I don't know, but I assume so, yeah.
Your website right here does
Okay.
talk about that.
Yeah.
So I have a yes or no question. Is promoting the work of Holocaust deniers and anti-Semites contrary to the national interest?
Promoting Holocaust denial and what have you is contrary to the national interest. That's why we haven't done it.
But you have promoted the work of Holocaust deniers. Like John Friend.
There were several examples. We've also promoted the work of Open Borders people in that effort to present a broad range of views. Yeah, absolutely. And we don't endorse one way or the other.
So you have promoted the work of Holocaust deniers, but have you received anything from Doge asking whether they want to cut your funding? Have Republicans called you in to ask about your nonprofit and said, hey, we don't like that you've promoted the work of Holocaust deniers? Have you had any funding cut by Doge or by this committee?
We don't get any funding to be cut.
But you have received Department of Justice funding. And
Decades
Census
ago, yes, yeah.
And so, look, let me just be real clear here. This hearing is not about taking on nonprofits that are going, quote, against the national interest or who are quote, extreme. This is all about trying to shut down nonprofits who might share political views that are different from that of the President of the United States. This hearing, they're going after organizations they call radical because they're kind to kids that are having trouble in school, kind to kids that are trying to figure out who they are in the world. They're going after nonprofits, and you, sir, and your nonprofit are saying that the radical people are the priests and nuns that feed the hungry, the nonprofit organizations that, yeah, give shelter to immigrants, that I understand your Center of Immigration Studies does not like immigration very much. But let me tell you, the radical folks aren't the folks out there doing good. The radical folks that you might disagree with, their version of the good, but the radical folks are the people that in your face come to this committee hearing and are sharing through their websites, through their listservs, articles by Holocaust deniers. And you're saying, yeah, we didn't share the Holocaust denying articles, but we shared some of his other stuff. I'll make my last point here clear. I represent Texas. I have long-standing ties to the city of El Paso, where in 2019, 23 people were murdered at a Walmart. The murderer said, quote, it was based on the Hispanic invasion of Texas. And after the shooting, Mr. Krikorian, you said that the manifesto was, quote, remarkably well written. Can you tell us which part of his manifesto was remarkably well written?
What I meant by that was that it seemed improbable for a nutcase like that to have written something that was relatively, at least grammatically correct. That was my point.
Look, folks here on this committee are trying to shut down nonprofits because they disagree with them. Your nonprofit and you, sir, saying that the El Paso shooter had a manifesto that's
the gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman's
what goes around comes around.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Chairwoman, okay.
I now recognize Mr. Jack from Georgia for 5 minutes.
I just want to make clear
Thank you,
that
Madam
what goes
Chair,
around can come around.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Pues así es, señores, eso es lo que tenemos. Ahora pasemos al siguiente tema, señores, algo muy interesante que he estado viendo. Y quiero que hablemos del uso de agentes encubiertos con máscaras y sin identificación, realizando detenciones en territorio estadounidense. Y todo esto, amigos, bajo la narrativa del control migratorio. Durante esta administración de Trump, especialmente bajo la influencia de Stephen Miller, ¿no? Hablamos de uno de los asesores más extremos en temas migratorios. El gobierno desplegó agentes federales de una forma muy irregular para detener a inmigrantes. Y como bien hemos visto, muchas de esas veces sin respetar los procedimientos legales básicos, como por ejemplo mostrar una orden, tan solo identificarse o incluso decir a qué agencia pertenece. Y bueno, suena como lo están pensando. Suena exactamente a policía secreta. Veamos la noticia.
Joining us now, NBC News senior investigative producer Sarah Fitzpatrick, Financial Times columnist and provost of King's College, Cambridge, Gillian Tett, and Atlantic staff writer and MSNBC analyst Ashley Parker. So, Ashley, to get everyone up to speed on what is happening right now, there are no plans for a Trump-Musk call today, according to the chief of staff. Trump is leaving for Bedminster right in about an hour, and the two of them are tweeting. We're posting on social media, but they're not posting on social media about each other. So is this thing going to die down or what?
So the true answer is nobody knows, including it sometimes feels like the president and Elon Musk himself. We have certainly seen a bit of a de-escalation from yesterday, whereas you put it, Elon Musk was willing to sort of out crazy Trump. One of the things that's fascinating is when some of Trump's other political rivals, I'm thinking most notably of Marco Rubio in the 2016 campaign, but there have been a number. When they try to go tit for tat with Donald Trump, you can it doesn't feel authentic to them. Their heart isn't in it. It's not their natural state. But it's very clear that Elon Musk is very comfortable using his voice, using his platform, using his money to ratchet things up in a way that President Trump has not experienced from a rival, and not just a rival, but someone who is Tapi put it to me the other day, Trump began his term only, 5-6 months ago overly enamored with Elon Musk. So this is a real evolution in that relationship. And I think there will be more twists and turns to come, potentially even before your 2 hours are over, Katie.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, Ashley. When people would ask me, and I'm sure you got this question a lot, ahead of Donald Trump's inauguration, whether this Musk relationship would last, my answer was this could last for a little bit longer than you expect, at least. Because Musk is not like anyone that Donald Trump is infatuated with momentarily. He's not so easily to use up and discard as some of the other people in his orbit have been, because Musk is just so rich, Ashley. I mean, he lost 150 or so billion dollars yesterday with the crash of Tesla stock down 14%. But he still has hundreds of billions of dollars more. Does the White House see this rift as risky for them?
Well, yesterday when I was talking to people inside the White House, the truth is they were consuming it in the exact same way that you and I were, Katie, which is just following every, ping pong ball back and forth. They kind of just couldn't believe what was happening. It is true, and there is an understanding, and I think you've even seen this from President Trump, and that he was more muted than he might have been when this began yesterday, that he understands that on the one hand, Elon Musk does need him in certain ways. Those government contracts are incredibly valuable to him. But Elon Musk exists outside of Donald Trump. He has his money. He has his status as the richest man in the world. Regardless, he has his voice on his social media platform. He has these other companies that in many ways are at the forefronts of their respective industries. So he doesn't need Donald Trump in that way. What was fascinating to me was I would not have predicted it would have imploded in this way, because my reporting was when Elon Musk left his position as a special government employee, he left on sort of, I would put it, lukewarm terms. I talked to a couple of people yesterday who said Elon had privately talked about, well, maybe I could extend my time in the White House. And Trump kind of politely said, nah, you've done a great job. You can leave now. So they weren't quite as close as they were at the very frenzied beginning of that situationship. But it was a good lukewarm relationship. And I remember thinking at the time in writing in The Atlantic, this is one of the few times someone has exited Trump's orbit with, a modicum of sort of grace and non-controversy. And then it kind of just blew up 5 days later in a way I don't think anyone was at least initially anticipating.
I like the way you use situationship there, Ashley. One of the things that seemed intended to, blow up the internet yesterday, Sarah, was Elon Musk sending out a post about Jeffrey Epstein. And just gives a little bit of background on why talking about Jeffrey Epstein and the Jeffrey Epstein files is so socially explosive.
Katie, you're absolutely right. It is socially explosive, and it is very distracting. I have spent years and years going across the country and across the world looking into essentially anyone that ever was involved in the Epstein sex trafficking scheme or even was with him. And I think it's really important that Trump has always been somewhat adjacent in the sense that he socialized with Jeffrey Epstein, but has never, and he was part of that circle. And he was one of those people that Jeffrey Epstein used to give himself the appearance of being kind of accepted by society. And that's part of why the sex trafficking operation was able to go on so long. And Elon Musk recognizes that when the name Epstein is kind of transmitted on the internet, on Truth Social, on Twitter, elsewhere, it gets amplified by kind of communities of conspiracy theories who find this just such an attractive target. And secondly, it gets amplified, independent researchers tell us, by online bot groups that are connected to our foreign adversaries, because they too have found, by watching how explosive this topic and this conspiracy moves across the internet. And I think, I've had multiple Justice Department officials tell me, when this comes out of the Justice Department, when you see people talking about these alleged Epstein files, and again, we don't know exactly what that universe of material is. Some things that they have already released under the Trump DOJ have shown to be almost entirely information that has been in the public domain for almost a decade. But it is is explosive and it is distracting, and it kind of hints at this conspiratorial thinking that kind of distracts from whatever the problem of the day is. So the minute I saw this stat yesterday, kind of as a viewer, I knew that this Epstein-Trump mention was going to come, because it's just such an explosive and sticky, in the internet of ideas, it's a very sticky conspiracy concept.
That is such a good way to put it. It is sticky, and this idea that Elon Musk knows exactly what button to push and knows that if it's coming from him, that more people are going to latch on to it. There had already been some bubbling anger within the MAGA world that DOJ was not releasing anything. You just alluded to it. People were really upset at Kash Patel, have been, and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi for not being forthcoming. And for Elon Musk to just say, again, without evidence, that the reason they're not doing this is because of Donald Trump, that is intended to do harm to Donald Trump politically. We're talking about.
I think you can see. Sorry to interrupt you, Katie. I think you can see that they kind of approach this idea, but we haven't seen any. They have the entire mechanism of the U.S. government, all of these agencies, the Department of Justice. You have a lot of people who are motivated. If there were something damning or destructive to anyone, kind of that could be in these files, and what we've seen is that they have talked about this big game, but we see no real effort either behind the scenes. We see no indication that they have called, this kind of material. There's a lot of rules about who can see it, what has to happen before you can release it, especially with names of victims and minor victims. And I know from my reporting that the DOJ has not started that process of notifying or going through those steps. And so I think, we're seeing this, the Trump kind of White House, if they wanted to, could also kind of squash this. And we're not seeing them do that either. And I think that's a very interesting dynamic.
I think that's really interesting. You're right about that. We're talking so much, Jillian, about the domestic stuff here, but there are global implications for this sort of fracture. Tell me how foreign leaders are watching this.
Well, the way that I've made sense of Donald Trump from day one, as I've said many times, is to treat the White House like the court of King Henry VIII or Louis XIV in Versailles, where you basically got a Sun King surrounded by courtiers in different factions, and he's playing them off against each other. And you've really had three factions around Trump since the beginning of his tenure. On the one hand, you have the congressional Republicans, you've got the techno-libertarians, sort of epitomized by Elon Musk, and then you've got the populist nationalists, people like Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro. And that split matters for policy reasons for the rest of the world, because there's long been a bubbling split between the populist nationalists and the techno-libertarians like Elon Musk around issues like immigration, around the tariffs, around the direction of tax policy, really fundamental questions, and also around the question of China, which in some ways is even more important. And so what the wider world is asking right now is, yes, these kind of teenage tantrums are amusing. They make for extraordinary reality TV. It does remind me as a mother of, two kids.
Señores, esto no debería de pasar nunca en un país democrático. Que agentes del Estado se comporten como una milicia encubierta, sin rendir cuentas a nadie, eso es algo muy peligroso. Estamos hablando de personas que pueden detenerte sin identificarse, sin decirte por qué, sin que tú puedas defenderte legalmente. Esto no es ley y orden, como decía Trump. Esto es abuso de poder. En muchos de estos casos, las personas detenidas ni siquiera sabían quién los estaba arrestando. Es más, cuando pedían una explicación, recibían que silencio, o frases como no damos nuestros nombres. ¿Desde cuándo los agentes del gobierno pueden operar como si fuesen, ¿qué?, una pandilla paramilitar? Y ojo, que sé que algunos dirán, bueno, si eran inmigrantes ilegales, entonces el Estado tiene el derecho a actuar. Y aquí viene lo importante, amigos. La Constitución de los Estados Unidos protege a todas las personas dentro del territorio, no solo a los ciudadanos. Eso incluye el derecho al debido proceso, a saber quién te está arrestando, a no ser detenido arbitrariamente. Incluso hemos visto cómo jueces tan conservadores como lo es Antonin Scalia han reconocido que los inmigrantes también tienen los derechos constitucionales. Entonces, ¿qué hace un gobierno ignorando la ley? Este es el tipo de acciones que alimentan la narrativa de miedo, la narrativa de la represión. Te hacen sentir que cualquiera y en cualquier momento puede ser desaparecido por el gobierno. Y eso, amigos, no es libertad, eso no es democracia, eso es autoritarismo. Y lo peor es que se vendió como seguridad nacional. Y del otro lado, pues no, también hay quienes dicen los agentes usan máscaras para proteger a sus familias de represalias. Ok, ¿protegerlos de qué? Si tú estás actuando conforme a la ley, con una orden judicial y deteniendo a personas con transparencia, ¿qué represalias vas a tener? Ese argumento se cae solo cuando tú pones en contexto. El problema no es la máscara, es la impunidad con la cual actúan. Es el ejemplo clarísimo de cómo la administración puede jugar con los límites del poder estatal solo para querer imponerte miedo y control, especialmente, amigos, sobre las comunidades más vulnerables. Donald Trump y Stephen Miller, en la cabeza, están utilizando el aparato del Estado como una herramienta de intimidación, no de justicia. Y eso, señores, quiero que se lo metan a la cabeza. Eso no se puede normalizar. Pero bueno, ¿qué opinan ustedes? ¿Creen que esto es un caso aislado? ¿Será que se trata de una estrategia sistemática? ¿Hasta qué punto un gobierno debe tener este tipo de poder? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Amigos, muchísimas gracias por acompañarme hasta el final de este video. Recuerda, como siempre, dale like, compártelo con tus amigos y suscríbete a nuestro canal Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Nos vemos en otro video. Hasta luego.